What if the greatest leap in human evolution was never meant for us? What if the merge wasn't a gift, but a lock? A cosmic prison, built to contain something too dangerous to name? In this season of UFO Confession Files, you'll uncover the terrifying truth behind the merge. Cities with no funerals. People screaming before they're harmed. Beings made of corrupted memory. And the final revelation. We were never the chosen species. We were the last firewall. Why were we built to forget? And what happens, now that we remember? After the merge, everything became quieter. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet you hear in the seconds before an earthquake. Stillness laced with tension, like the world was holding its breath. I lived in the northern ranges of what used to be Colorado, though since the merge, borders had dissolved. Language, too. Most people didn't speak anymore. They shared. Ideas flowed across skin and soil without sound. But I couldn't hear them. I was cut off. That's why I kept going to the mountains. I thought maybe, up there where the merge's reach was thinner, I could still be just human. But I was wrong. That's where I heard it first. It began as a low tremor beneath my boots, not seismic, but internal. Like the bones of the world were vibrating against mine. I stopped near the edge of a cliff carved out by time, and as the wind stilled, I heard a voice. Not a voice. A thought. It didn't come through my ears. It arrived fully formed in my mind, etched like a sentence I had never read but somehow always known. You are not the first. I stumbled back, heart racing. The stone beneath me felt warm. Breathing. No, not breathing. Thinking. Over the next few days, I returned to that same cliff. The thought was clearer each time. You are carrying what we planted. The body you inhabit grew from our memory. I tried to ignore it. I hiked elsewhere. But the thoughts followed. One morning, I woke with dirt under my fingernails and rock dust on my tongue. My boots were wet. But I hadn't gone outside. I set up camp near the ridge and placed an old analog recorder near the stone. I didn't expect it to pick up anything. But when I played it back, I heard laughter. Ancient. Hollow. Like something remembering itself through me. Then came the change. The stone began to pulse, faintly visible, rhythmic. As if the mountain itself had a heartbeat. I traced my hand over its surface and found grooves I hadn't noticed before. Lines. Like a face etched into the cliff, eroded by millennia, now resurfacing. But the face wasn't human. Not alien either. It was something abstract made solid. The kind of thing that only made sense when you felt it, not when you looked. I started losing time. I'd blink and find myself kneeling, forehead pressed to the rock, whispering phrases I didn't understand in languages not spoken on Earth. At night, the stars realigned over that peak, not shifting randomly, but forming glyphs. Maps. Diagrams of something buried deep beneath us. I wasn't alone. Others had started arriving. Pilgrims. Silent ones. Drawn by the same hum in their minds. They didn't speak to me. They just sat, day after day, hands placed on the stone, heads tilted back, eyes closed. Then one woman opened her eyes and said, "It's not a mountain. It's a lobe. A remnant of their cerebral construct." The merge didn't just unlock us. It awakened them. I asked who they were. She bled from her nose and whispered, "They are what Earth forgot it was." That night, the mountain cracked. Not loudly. Not violently. It simply opened. Not a fissure. A lid. A hidden cavern beneath, spiraling inward like a geode brainstem. Smooth walls lined with crystalline threads pulsing with faint bioluminescent thought. As I descended, I didn't feel fear. I felt remembered. As if the space had been waiting for me. Like it recognized the particular arrangement of my neurons. At the bottom, I found it. A stone not large, not glowing, not carved. Just, resting. But as I touched it, I understood. This wasn't just a mountain's mind. It was a backup. A fragment of pre-human sentience embedded into Earth's crust before humanity even existed. A thought seed. Meant to grow once enough consciousness reconnected to the source. The merge had watered it. And now it was sprouting. I tried to leave, but the passage had shifted. The path back was unfamiliar. The stone no longer pulsed. It had transferred something. And now my thoughts echoed before I even thought them. I dreamed of landscapes folding into themselves. Of rivers reversing direction. Of voices crawling out of stone faces and whispering names that weren't mine. And in every vision, I saw more mountains waking. Across continents. Across oceans. A neural field of memory, ancient and alive, growing from Earth's deepest foundations. The Earth wasn't just hosting the merge. It was using it. And the mountain had only one final message for me. We are thinking again. After the mountain spoke to me, I descended back into what was once a city. Or what had started as one. The landscape had changed not in shape, but in logic. Streets still connected. Buildings still stood. But none of it made sense anymore. There were windows with no walls. Roads that led into themselves. And street lights that didn't light the ground, they illuminated memories. If you stood beneath one long enough, you'd start reliving something but not your own. It took me hours to realize what was happening. The cities were becoming minefields, territories made of thought, not concrete. They grew based on what people remembered. Not what was planned. I found a district where every building had no doors. Just smooth black walls that hummed if you got too close. I saw people pressing their foreheads against them. Some screamed. Others smiled. One woman vanished entirely. Her reflection stayed behind for a few seconds before it faded like mist. I followed the signs, not painted, but remembered. The signs appeared only when I needed them. I thought library, and the pavement rearranged itself to lead me to a place that felt like one. But inside, there were no books. Only people sitting silently on steps that spiraled down, each holding a memory in their hand, glowing, floating like jellyfish. I made the mistake of touching one. It wasn't a memory I'd lived. But the moment I touched it, I became the person who did. I felt their childhood, their hunger, their death. All in 9 seconds. Then I collapsed. When I woke up, my name wasn't in my mind anymore. Just static. And a number, X03, local thought holder. That's when I knew, the city was assigning identities. Based on who was needed most. Based on what memories needed to be preserved. But something went wrong. Deep in the eastern district where the old financial towers once stood, I found a zone where nothing stayed still. The air shimmered. Glass shifted. And the buildings changed shape depending on who was watching them. It wasn't architecture anymore. It was self-aware geometry. And it hated confusion. A man near me asked aloud, "What used to be here?" And the entire block collapsed into a pit. A voice roared from nowhere, "Unstable thought detected." He never came out. I tried to leave, but the sidewalks had become thought loops. If you feared getting lost, you got lost. If you remembered your way out, it rewrote itself to trap you inside that memory. I passed the same intersection 5 times in 20 minutes, each time with different graffiti on the walls, each time with my own face slightly older in the reflection. I realized I was inside my own recollection loop. But I never built this place. So whose memory was it? Then it hit me. The cities weren't built by humans anymore. They were built by collective thought shaped by the strongest memories within the merge. The cities weren't meant to shelter people. They were meant to preserve patterns of cognition. Cities as neural sanctuaries. Memory as infrastructure. Buildings weren't occupied, they were experienced. I found a man curled up against a wall that wasn't there an hour ago. He whispered, "Don't think of her. Don't remember her face." I asked who. He cried and said, "This building, this whole block, is my daughter's scream. I relived her death too many times. Now it exists." That's when I saw it. A structure in the far distance twisting upward like a DNA spiral of glass and shadow. It wasn't connected to anything. It just hovered, rotating slowly. And inside each spiral tear, I saw memories playing like film reels, thousands of lives, frozen and cycling. And I knew, that was a mind core. A consciousness hub. A place where ancient memory was being funneled, filtered, repurposed into architecture. Not as storage, but as intentional environment. That's when it became clear. We weren't walking through cities anymore. We were walking through the thoughts of whatever Earth had become. And the worst part? Some memories were corrupted. And those were becoming sentient. After the cities began to breathe with memory, I moved east following whispers that led to what used to be the Chicago shell. I was told something had changed there. Something dangerous. Not like before. Not spatial. Not architectural. Temporal. People had begun to scream in the streets. But not out of pain. Not from fear. They screamed before anything happened. A man would walk into an intersection and collapse in terror, screaming with every cell in his body, only for the vehicle to crash into him 30 seconds later. A child screamed in her sleep, then hours later, the building caught fire. No one else smelled smoke until then. They called them the pre-echoed. People who vocalized future trauma. Like living sirens. No one knew why it started. Only that it was spreading. I entered the city at dusk. The air was unusually still, almost held back, like time was afraid to move. I watched a man freeze on the sidewalk. His eyes widened, mouth shaking. He screamed. 30 seconds later, a street light fell from above, crashing down exactly where he had stood. But he had moved. Because of the scream. I tried to talk to him. He looked past me and muttered, "It's not me screaming. It's something using my mouth." He walked away and didn't look back. Then I heard it. My own scream. Not loud. Not full-throated. A strangled whisper of agony, echoing faintly inside my head. I looked around. Nothing had happened. No threat. No pain. But I had heard it, me, breaking apart. And then I saw it. A woman standing completely still in the middle of a cracked street. Her eyes were closed. Her mouth wide open. But no sound. And yet, every dog in the area began howling. Windows shook. An ambulance down the block began blinking, even though no one had touched it. The sound was real, but not in our time. I approached slowly. Her name tag said Clara. Her body was vibrating slightly like a tuning fork. When I touched her wrist, I was pulled into something outside of time. Not a vision. Not a hallucination. It was a layer thin and shimmering where the world played out 43 seconds ahead. I could see myself walking, pausing, raising my hand to her shoulder, before I did it. A bubble of future, barely stitched to the now. And inside it, a scream traveling backward. Echoing across the barrier. These weren't just accidents being predicted. These were wounds already echoing from events that hadn't yet occurred. The merge hadn't only unlocked memories, it had cracked the seal on temporal resonance. Every thought, every trauma, every act of violence had started bleeding into past-present loops. And screams were the body's way of rejecting foreign time. I pulled back, breath ragged. Clara opened her eyes. She said one word, "Run." The moment I turned, I saw them. People moving in jerky, unnatural patterns. Twitching every few seconds. Their heads snapping to where they'd be next. One woman walked sideways for 20 meters before vanishing into a ripple of static. These weren't pre-echoed. They were future-bound. People who had already experienced the next 24 hours and were stuck replaying it on loop. One of them looked at me. His mouth opened. My voice came out. "You tried to stop this. But you were always too late." I collapsed. My mind screaming before my body followed. The last thing I remember was the city folding in on itself, not physically, but chronologically. Time inverting. Future screams infecting present space. Whole districts pulsing with delayed terror. And in that moment, I understood. We hadn't merged with alien intelligence. We had merged with alien time. Not just another species' thoughts, but their entire perception of cause and effect. We were no longer anchored. And soon, we would all start screaming. Before we even knew why. I had stopped trusting what I saw. After Chicago collapsed into time echo spirals, I headed into the Red Belt, a stretch of cities where the merge had never fully completed. Locals called it the Silent Fold. From satellite view, the terrain looked intact. From the ground, it was wrong. Buildings had no shadow. People left no footprints. And the sky, while blue, never moved. No clouds. No wind. Just a frozen dome of light. At first, I thought it was some kind of simulation zone. A failed merge pocket, like a corrupted file. But then I saw them. Not people. Not alien. Not alive. They stood at the edges of intersections, motionless, faceless. Bodies like wax melting yet still upright. Their arms were too long. Their heads didn't have features, only smoothed shapes where eyes and mouths should have been. They didn't move. But they multiplied. I passed the same street 3 times, and each time, there were more of them. A man approached me, eyes wide, skin cracked like old clay. He whispered, they were part of the first merge. But they never finished forming. Too much noise. Not enough memory. He collapsed, and his body didn't fall. It unraveled. Threads of him dissolved into the air like broken code. I turned and saw one of the faceless ones pointing at me. Not with a hand. With a thought. It echoed through my skull like static trapped in bone. You stole what we could not become. I ran. But nothing changed. The buildings repeated. The same alley appeared behind every turn. And the faceless ones began to follow, never walking, never chasing. Just appearing. Closer. Closer. Always pointing. Always flickering between forms. As if they couldn't decide what to be. That's when I understood. They were born from corrupted memory. When the merge spread, it absorbed thought, emotion, identity, but not every thought was complete. Some memories were fragmented, suppressed, distorted by trauma. And those fragments didn't vanish. They took shape. Not as full beings, but as attempts. I entered an old metro station beneath the city. The walls were smooth, featureless, as if the architecture had forgotten what design was. And on the floor, etched into the concrete like scars, were phrases. I remember her eyes. But not her face. I was someone before the sky changed. We were erased because we were incomplete. The train arrived. No lights. No sound. Inside, more faceless ones sat still. Waiting. They didn't react when I stepped in. But the moment the doors closed, the windows became mirrors. Not reflecting me, reflecting people I almost became. A soldier. A teacher. A man holding a child I'd never had. Each version flickered, glitching with pain and silence. The train didn't move. But the world outside changed. When the doors opened again, I was standing in a place I didn't recognize but also knew. Like a dream remembered after waking. It was a memory I never had, made real. And at the center, suspended midair, was a figure half-formed, its skin unfinished, eyes stitched shut from the inside. It spoke without sound. You built your world on forgotten pieces. We are the pieces. My body froze. Not from fear. But because my muscle memory was hijacked. My limbs acted out movements I didn't intend. A sequence. A ritual. Like some part of me had been programmed to receive them. They approached me not to hurt but to insert themselves. Like fragments looking for a host. Not to possess. But to finish becoming. I screamed. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming surge of identities colliding inside me. Thoughts that didn't belong. Faces I couldn't name. And in that chaos, a message burned itself into my brain. Merge incomplete. Seeking completion through host. I clawed at my skin, at my eyes, trying to hold onto myself. But for one moment, I saw everything they had been. An alien species half evolved, half simulated. Cut off from their origin point when the first merge was aborted. Left behind in psychic limbo. They had no way to finish themselves. Until we came along. And now, they were returning. Through us. As us. I escaped the zone by walking backward, reversing every step I had taken since entering. It worked. But I still hear them. In mirrors. In static. In dreams where faces blur too fast to remember. We think we merged with alien intelligence. We didn't. We completed something that should have stayed unfinished. They say the merge was humanity's ascension. That we evolved, reached a higher plane, finally connected to something greater than ourselves. They were wrong. The merge wasn't evolution. It was a breach. I arrived at the signal well just before midnight. It wasn't marked on any map. It wasn't built by human hands. It simply appeared, a hole in the earth where sound died. A pit that devoured radio, language, even thought if you stood too close. Those who knew of it called it the original silence. It was surrounded by 12 pillars. Each one etched in languages lost before we learned to write. The wind moved between them like breath exhaled by something that used to be alive but now waits. When I stepped inside the circle, every device I carried went black. My heart skipped once. Then again. Then it stopped, for 11 seconds. And in those seconds, I saw. Not with eyes. With the part of my mind the merge had unlocked. I saw the birth of the echo core. I saw civilizations rise and fall in time loops layered over each other like sediment. I saw Earth as not a planet, but a structure, a host interface. And I saw the truth. We were never the intended result. We were the fail-safe. The merge was never about connection. It was a last resort containment protocol, initiated by an alien intelligence so vast, so ancient, it no longer used identity-only intention. It had encountered something it could not delete. Something that could rewrite the concept of life just by being perceived. They called it the mind without form. And Earth? Earth was its cage. The merge wasn't to set us free. It was to lock it in. But something broke. Because we merged wrong. Our species, we were too emotional. Too fragmented. We brought our pain, our greed, our questions. And those created fractures in the containment field. The merge opened pathways it was meant to close. Now the mind without form is seeping through us. Whispering not with words but with desire. We want more. More thought. More knowledge. More merge. But each time we connect, we feed it. Because desire is its doorway. At the bottom of the signal well, I found something buried in light. Not a machine. Not a shrine. A memory. An ancient broadcast loop, playing the same warning again and again in a voice that was almost human. If this message reaches you, stop. You are not meant to be us. We built you to forget. You remembered. Now run. The earth began to shake not with seismic force, but recognition. It was waking. Not as a world. As a mind. A mind infected. I ran. The sky split. But not with lightning. With thoughts. Thoughts made visible folding like paper across dimensions. Whole cities blinked out of sync. Oceans whispered names that weren't real. People began speaking in reverse prophecy, describing things that hadn't happened yet but were remembered. Then came the unraveling. Mountains collapsed into themselves, revealing circuitry older than stone. Children stopped aging, frozen as placeholders of DNA still in negotiation. And the faceless ones returned, not as forms but as conduits. Through them, the mind without form began to speak. You opened the skin. Now I am the blood. My final transmission was this. I am not sure if you'll receive it in time, or in order. Time is no longer a straight path. It curves now, spirals through the cracks of identity, meaning, and matter. But if you hear this, do not merge again. The merge was a lock. You've turned it into a mirror. And the thing looking back is not you. So now you know the truth. The merge wasn't our salvation. It was the beginning of the undoing. The question is, if you were the last human with this knowledge, would you keep it secret? Or would you scream it into the world before time folds in? What was the most haunting part of this season for you? Was it the faceless ones, the time echoes, or the realization that Earth itself is a cage? If you were the character in this story, what would you have done? Would you run, resist, or merge again? Brain, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Bell, and if you want to keep exploring the truths they buried beneath your memories, subscribe now to the Alien Storyverse. The truth needs witnesses. Maybe that witness is you.